Solange is here as well with the papers today. Solange is starting off with that terrible story. We saw those awful images in the report earlier on from India with that surge of coronavirus.
Yeah, in the Hindustan Times, it puts it very simply and very effectively. It is the world's worst outbreak, with a number of cases in a single day hitting a tragic global record. Over 300,000 new cases in one day. The Times of India laments, quote, a barreling past another grim milestone, mentioning as well over 2,000 deaths yesterday. And the paper also dives into the news of a new variant and another one, a triple mutation, that may partially be responsible for the surge, which has, as The Guardian puts it, turned Indian hospitals into living hells. And the paper describes overrun ERs, oxygen shortages, leaks, people turning to social media for a final SOS for help. The Guardian also says that the variants, which are particularly targeting and killing young people, aren't the whole story. The political choices and this attitude of we're beating this, well, it created a perfect storm and should serve, according to The Guardian, as a sort of warning for other nations not to ease up too fast.
To Russia now. Over 1,400 people arrested. This is after they rallied in support of Alexei Navalny.
Yeah, and the protests and the police roundup of the supporters of Alexei Navalny's, well, they made the cover of the Wall Street Journal today. The paper describes thousands who protested for better care for the jailed Kremlin critic. And for the Washington Post as well, action needs to be taken now and not in memoriam if the opposition leader were to die in jail. And the paper argues that Western nations need to go after the money, and specifically to stop allowing corrupt oligarch funds from being spent in their countries. Now, money is the main story as well of the Russian paper Kommersant, but not in regard to Navalny or the protests. Instead, it is Vladimir Putin who is on the front page, with the paper discussing all the government aid and a warning to the West that Putin put in his State of the Union address.
Climate change now. Joe Biden kicking off that two-day climate summit today. We talked about this one earlier too.
Yeah, launched on Earth Day, which is today. This virtual summit of some 40 leaders is a sort of climate calling card for Biden. Libération says it is his way of saying we're ready to up the ante and cut U.S. fossil fuel pollution in half by 2030. Now, this pledge was made by Europe earlier this week, and one that Politico says needs to be more than just hot air, and a source of tension as well between France and Germany, that powerful incentives like taxes and pollution permits need to be part of the as yet unannounced and unnegotiated plan. Now, Chapat, the illustrator, plays with this return of climate pledges in Le Temps. To Biden's "We're back" sign, you've got Merkel and Macron retorting while looking up at a polluted, dark sky. You never left.
And finally, Solange is sticking with the theme of the environment. This is the New York Times, taking us on a kind of, sort of seed hunt, really.
Yeah, it is one of the world's oldest, longest-running scientific experiments. It's also a bit of a treasure hunt. The Times explains how scientists at Michigan State University began digging in the middle of the night for, quote, a botanist's version of buried treasure or a bottle filled with sand and a bunch of seeds. And they've been doing this every 20 years since the bottles were buried 142 years ago by the scientist William Beale. Now, it's not just for tradition. It's actually to find out how long seeds live, what conditions they may sprout in, and as well to see if their DNA is still intact even if the seeds don't germinate, which could help scientists in the future figure out how to bring back, if necessary, some of the world's long-lost plants.
Nice. And you found us another story about working with plants too.
Yes, a very special plant, I should say. That plant is marijuana, and the job is to smoke it. Yes, you heard me correctly. Slate tells us that a U.S. site is looking to hire someone to smoke pot for them for a year. And in exchange for their toking and their reviews, the pot smoker will get a salary of 35,000 euros, paid vacation, not to mention 200 euros worth of weed every month. But there is a hitch. For all those pot smokers out there in the world, you have to live in a place where pot smoking is legal.
You should have seen Stephen Carroll. He was sitting there with his hand up going, me, give me that job, weren't you? I saw him, but you can't, sorry. Thanks, Solange. Thanks, Stephen. More from them, of course, later on.